it's a particular pleasure to welcome back our distinguished keynote speaker, Homi Bhabha, who started our event yesterday with an openness and a warmth and a critical insight, which has carried us throughout the day and has obviously provided the foundations for so many critical conversations around the world. So thank you once again. In that spirit of openness and of recognising the extent to which conversations are in progress, today we have two workshops, one immediately after our keynote debate and discussion, which we'll have now, and one after lunch, which will be presenting some works in progress from the Refugee Hosts team and the Refugee Hosts project. Recognising the ways in which research analysis is ongoing in conversation and has to be an intimate dialogue with different perspectives, voices, and speakers. And with that in mind, and thinking to Tom's presentation yesterday as well, and the critique of voice, I just wanted to start with a few words from Yusuf's writing, a piece that he published in Migration and Society when we launched the journal last year. And he writes of the importance of an act to embroider the voice with its own needle, an act proposed to problematize the notion of the voice, something that cannot be given to anyone, since it must firmly belong to everyone from the beginning. And amongst other things, this is a very powerful reminder of the barriers that prevent voices from being heard, not the need to give voice or speak on behalf of others, but rather to be open to the listening that Tom was referring to, and the recognition of writing poetry as analysis, not solely as a means of seasoning or of spicing up initiatives and projects. And that's very much the spirit with which we have engaged in interdisciplinary research in the Refugee Hosts project, viewing writing, critical engagement as intimate parts of intimate processes within the research project. Before I turn to introductions and moving on to our panel, I must start with some thank yous, because we may not have time for thank yous towards the end of the day. And I'd like to start by thanking Phil and Patrick for leading the live streaming of the event so that those many, many people who are joining us online are able to connect us. Thank you for continuing through the many technical difficulties, and for those of you who are listening online, please do join us in thanking Phil and Patrick for all their hard work in live streaming the event. We must thank Maha and Hanifa for the unenviable task of simultaneously translating and interpreting the proceedings, including quite complex presentations by different speakers, complex and challenging politically, intellectually, and personally as well, but also obviously challenging in the terms of interpreting and translating words which have so many complex meanings. So again, please join us in thanking Maha and Hanifa for their amazing work. Not present with us in the room, but integral members of the conference are Rania, Marta and Janice, who have been providing exceptional entertainment and support to our children, those of us who have had the pleasure of having our children cared for so beautifully while we have been in the conference, and enabling us to focus on the proceedings. It is absolutely essential that we reduce the structural barriers that have often prevented people from being able to contribute and speak and participate in events such as this. We've always provided child-friendly spaces for the workshops that we have run in the Middle East, and this is something that we will continue to embody into practice. So again, thank you so much to our childminders for caring for our children in ways that replicate those many, many processes where those of us who are able to stand and speak in public rely on the care provided by others. So thank you so much to Marta, Yanis and Rania. Many thanks also to our volunteer assistants, who have been absolutely fantastic. And again, I'm sure that you'll join me in thanking Noor, Asia, Tilde, Nepal, Joanna, and Gulazar. Thank you all so very much for all of your hard work. Thank you. And last and not least, thank you to Aidan and Soraka and Sabine for all their support, not just today, but in the many months leading up to the conference, for their patience as I have demanded more and more and more of them to be able to develop, I hope you'll agree, a very strong, multifaceted, multi-scalar conference, which has encompassed the live streaming, the interpreting, the childcare, the nourishment that we have received, the broad support structures to facilitate the transportation, the accommodation, and the enrichment of our conversations today. So thank you, Aidan, Soraka, and Sabine. Thank you. So with those thank yous in mind, and bearing in mind that we are a community that relies on other communities for this practice, we will turn to the first of today's sessions, which is a keynote conversation, or perhaps a keynote debate, around the politics of knowledge production and the ethics of knowledge production in conflict and displacement situations. And for me, it's a particular pleasure to welcome both Professor Saadi Hanafi and Professor Patricia Daly as our keynote speakers today. For many, many reasons, this is a pleasure. So intellectually speaking, they are absolutely at the apex of critical thought on questions surrounding so many different themes and issues, but in particular for today, the challenges that we face vis-a-vis production of knowledge, the circulation of knowledge in unequal environments around the world. So it's a particular pleasure to welcome them. Also, personally, this is actually, Saadi and I met for the first time on Wednesday in person, in spite of having collaborated on a number of projects over almost a decade. So it's been wonderful to be able to meet in person, and in many ways to offer an opportunity for a platform for a book that Patricia and I co-edited, which was published last year, which is the Handbook of South-South Relations, which includes a chapter by Saadi and a chapter also obviously by Patricia and many, many more, which is part of an ongoing conversation that Patricia and I have been having with many other colleagues relating to thinking in different ways and challenging the canonical mainstream forms of knowledge, which have come to be at the core of so many academic debates, policy debates, practice debates, and to think about the pluriversal ways of knowing and of being in the world, and of engaging critically with those conversations. So it's a real pleasure to welcome Saadi and Patricia. The way that today will be, this morning's session will be structured is Saadi will speak for 10 to 15 minutes, then Patricia will speak for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll bring together our conversations. I have invited them to be as provocative as they would like, again, bearing in mind the opening remarks that I offered yesterday, where I hope that we are in a space where we are ready to be uncomfortable and disrupted in different ways, in a productive discomfort. So we'll see how provocative the opening remarks are and how provocative the discussion will be, and if we remain in a conversational tone or whether we do enter dynamics of debate in that process. So we will also be transferring the mic across the table to hopefully enable those of you joining us online to be able to follow the conversation. So I will start by welcoming Saadi Hanafi to the podium.